Hello, fellow caregivers. Welcome to the Caregivers Experience. My name's Mike.
I'm Eric.
And what are we talking about today, Eric?
We're going to talk about the fun world of UTIs.
Woo!
That's a big issue for both of us.
Yeah.
Well, not for us, but for, for our loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's our number one issue that our loved ones are hospitalized for.
And again, neither of us are doctors.
No.
So, if you have a question about this, go see your doctor.
That's right. This is our experience.
Right. This is our experience. I have problems. My wife has problems with it all the time. And she is in bed all the time at this point. So if she gets a UTI, it shows up in her lungs. And I'm worried that she can't breathe and it's a lung problem.
That's right.
It's everything's connected.
Yep.
One problem leads to another. And when you're healthy, you don't realize it. But
right. So symptoms vary. And when you talk about symptoms with UTIs, sometimes there are no symptoms at all, none, except that we know that there's a problem because we're familiar with their normal behavior. We see a difference in the routine. We see a difference in the responses. And that's another critical thing that we're going to talk about is that UTIs in people that are vulnerable, especially older people with mental illness or people with chronic diseases like MS, they react to UTIs very differently than other people. Healthy people who get UTIs usually don't have psychological symptoms. And that's a classic thing, and that's
it's
one
more like the simple the burning, the frequent urination.
Right.
Those are when you're healthy.
Yeah.
But when you're not healthy,
right.
My wife doesn't have the burning.
Right.
She has the frequent urination, but she has other symptoms like you were talking about.
Right.
The cognitive instances.
Yeah, and it's been a long battle. I've finally discovered something that's been tremendous for my mother, because I would say that she had to have to get her to the emergency room at least once every 3 months with the UTI. And in my mother's case, because she's at this point disabled, that means an ambulance. And it's a whole it's parade of people and it's a scary thing for her. And it's not a fun thing to do. And I'll mention what the treatment that we've had that found that helped. We tried everything over the counter. Nothing's helped over the counter. But we finally found a prescription. It was suggested to me by the doctor that we use in the hospital. That doctor is known as a hospitalist, who actually is a staff doctor of the hospital, who I've developed a relationship with over the years, and he's actually a friend of mine now. And he suggested something, and I mentioned it to her urologist, and it seems to help a lot. But going back to the symptoms, like I said, sometimes with an elderly person, the only symptom you have is a behavioral symptom. So my mother, since she suffers from dementia, and also she has a cognitive issue related to a brain injury, her primary first symptom is delusion. So she'll say really off the wall things. It's harder to detect as her dementia progresses, because she says off the wall things all the time now. But
can't wait to hear some of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. But that's really the first, from me and from my mother's experience, that's the first thing that happens. And then, what do you notice first with UTI with Liz?
It's similar. I get a lot of wake ups in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
3-4 times in a night where it's what time is it?
Right.
Or what day is it?
Well,
where am I?
My wake ups are funnier than Mike's, and the reason they're funnier is that I'm a very sensitive sleeper. Literally, a pin drop will wake me up.
Well, you sort of learn that as a caregiver too.
Yeah, that's true too. You become hypersensitive.
Yeah.
So my mother, the middle of the night calls that I get from my mother sounds like the house is haunted. So I hear, oh, Oh, we have a dog, and the dog, she's now almost 17 years old. But when she was younger, when this started, which was, recently, 5 years ago, her hearing was better, and she would panic too because she didn't know what's going on either.
Yeah.
And I'd hear her barking, and all this stuff is going on at 3 or 4 o'clock at night, and then I go downstairs to check, and then I would say to my mother, "What's going on?" And she said, "I don't know. I didn't hear anything."
Well, I'll also get, like I said, my wife will get, because she's got a tracheostomy.
Right.
She will get extremely congested. We'll clean out the congestion,
Right.
And 15 minutes later, it's congested again, and we're like, "Oh no, she's got a respiratory illness and stuff." But I've learned how to, look at the mucus. That grows in anybody out there, and you can look online for the color of mucus and start diagnosing it and look to see if there's anything when we do suction to see if anything's being pulled out.
Right.
And I'm like, "Well, there's nothing. What keeps happening? Maybe we're just reclining her too much." And it's like, "Oh," and she's saying, "I just don't feel good." I'm like, "What's bothering you?" "I don't know. My whole body just doesn't feel good." It's like, okay, so you're working through it. And we also do a self-catheterization like 5-6 times a day, which actually, because they're sterile catheterizations, is actually introduces less bacteria than if you did a Foley and left it in there for a week. Or they actually have another one, which is actually a port.
Oh, really?
We
Wow.
talked to the doctor because we were thinking, maybe that's a better thing, right? And he's like, "No, you'll get more infections than that than doing a straight cath." So we're stuck doing it 5-6 times a day, or more. When that's the frequent urination definitely hits us.
Well, that's true with any kind of port, any kind of thing that you're potentially introducing bacteria makes them vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a consideration when the doctor says we have to do this procedure or that procedure. It's something to think about. Ultimately, it also might be more work, but if it has to happen, it has to happen. There's nothing you can do about it.
My aide and I sit there, pulling at her hair a little bit.
Right.
Because we'll do a catheter and, get her all cleaned up, get her all set. And 10 minutes to 20 minutes later, she's like, "I've got to pee." And we're like, "You don't have to pee." But, that'll be the one time that she has to pee, and she'll be like, "Told you so."
Well, that's my mother with her dementia. If I'm changing her, if we use these adult diapers, and if I'm changing one of her diapers, almost not every time, but very frequently, the second the diaper comes off, "Oh, I have to pee." Are you kidding? You had the diaper on. What can you do?
Yep.
That's why they invented bed chucks. So my mother's anatomy is very difficult because they always have a problem inserting a catheter. I don't do catheter insertion. This man is the world champion of catheter insertion. I've
taught many nurses at the hospitals.
Yep.
And the rehab places. And they're not supposed to let me do it, but a couple nurses have been, because I'm just like, "No, you're doing it wrong." Like I don't say it mean like that because they're the professionals,
right?
But I'm like, "Listen, I do this 6 times a day for years now." The one thing that I have noticed with the anatomy, if my wife is constipated,
well, it's the same sphincter.
But the urethra, angles up. And it's very hard to get it in. You have to get it in and angle upwards. When she's not constipated, it's like, "Oh, look, I'm right here. Hello, everybody." You just go right in.
Yeah.
What was it? What was that show? Orange is the New Black?
Oh, yeah.
That show, that one episode, A Hole Within a Hole, which talks about where women pee out of, was hysterical for me. And everybody's like, "What's so funny?" All the women that I knew didn't get it either. I'm like, "Yeah, well."
That's fun. What's funny about that? I shouldn't. I was going to mention Howard Stern. The reason I mentioned Howard Stern is because he was just talking about, like, he didn't know about women's anatomy. Like, he had no idea that there was a separate hole. Like, he thought that it all comes out of the same place.
Right.
It most certainly doesn't.
They're right next to each other.
They're right next to each other, but they're not the same thing. And I would have thought, like, I knew that, I don't know, when I was 12. Because we had a health class and they taught us that. I mean, I knew it from that.
You remembered it from that?
Yeah, sure.
because they were talking about women's anatomy.
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
I'm
okay.
a boy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's going to come in handy someday.
Yeah, can't wait to get that catheter in my head. Yeah.
But yeah, so there are a lot of difficulties involved with this kind of stuff, and it's a problem for a lot of older women and a lot of disabled people, because when you don't have, part of the issue with being disabled also is that you're not exercising certain parts of your body, and they become atrophy, and that's one of the vulnerabilities for UTI.
Yeah.
Is that, the muscles are not as strong, and there's a lot of muscle coordination just to pee. So there's a lot of muscle coordination to do everything. So.
I mean, I do like our urologist that we have.
Yeah.
We've been going to him for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
He actually will, call and let me know things, if for one reason or another I wasn't able to make it. But for most of the time I've been there, and I've learned so many fun things. Like, another sign of UTIs, right, that they always tell you is if your urine is cloudy, has sediment in it and stuff like that,
or even blood.
Oh, well, blood is definitely a big symptom, but the cloudy thing, you got to watch out for that, because if you have had anything high in potassium, if you ate a banana, yogurt, I think is high in potassium, it clouds the urine instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we all know what happens if you eat asparagus.
Right.
It becomes neon.
Actually,
and smells like whoop.
And that's an interesting thing in terms of, this is a weird discussion. Well, I guess it's not a weird discussion.
This is what we're here for.
But there's a lot of attributes to urine. If you Google on a medical site, a real medical site, you can learn that foamy urine means something. And not just foamy urine. There's like a science behind the foam. How much foam there is,
That's
how long it takes for the foam to disappear.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
And also the smell of the urine. A lot of these things indicate if there's protein in the urine, if there's sugar in the urine, if there, and a lot of these things are also related to infection, but also related to diabetes and other illnesses, kidney disease.
And of course the color.
And the color means a lot.
It's easier for me because we actually do self-cath, but we use a Foley bag,
right,
which is phenomenal. I'm trying to get to wake up the hospitals to what the insurance companies have already figured. We used to get little individual bag with every catheter.
Right.
Oh, man, the amount of waste every time you're throwing the bag. The bag that urine doesn't go back up in like that. It's hanging down.
Right. It's gravity. So
right. So they also, you got to push it, but it'll go right on a Foley bag. So you can still change your Foley bag once a week.
Right.
And you can even sit it there so that a doctor can come and hold it up to the light and examine it and stuff, rather than these little bags that don't really have caps that are very good and will pop and leak. I have experience with that.
Yeah. Like,
you're trying to, we're going to pour it into the toilet, but you try to rush it. It took me 2 tries of popping a urine bag all over me and the bathroom for me to learn. Yeah, no, have a little patience.
but that's interesting, because also the urine sample that you get from a Foley bag or one of those things, it's considered a clean sample, because you're not introducing something that's going to get debris on it first.
Yeah, they don't really like it coming out of the Foley bags, though.
No, I'm not saying from the Foley bag.
They do have like a needle insertion thing.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm saying is to get the urine directly from the bladder rather than putting things through. And even when you go to your doctor and you're giving urine into a cup, that's not a pure sample, because it's still got to go through your urethra, and also you could be exposing it to things. Just being in your underwear could expose it to things.
Oh, I've got another tip. I don't know if I've told you this before. Like the doctor has said, you don't have to, like when I do a catheter.
Yeah.
And again, speak to your own doctor. It depends on your patient's situation.
Yep.
But for my wife, he says you don't have to use those little iodine wipes.
Oh, the betadine.
Betadine, yes, which completely sterilize that area every single time.
Right.
Because it's a messy area as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you decide to, let's say you're getting a lot of infections or cross infections from the vagina, you might have a a yeast infection, and you could push that in there, and then you get a cross infection.
Right.
I know there's a technical name, but you understand what that is. What he says is, if you want to use those things, that's fine. Just make sure all of those betadine things, they are all irritants. So you can use them to cleanse the area, but make sure after you're done, you wipe all the irritant off. Otherwise, you're going to get a raw area.
So I should, and on that topic, I should tell you what I do. Every time I change my mother, I don't just put on diapers and not clean the area. I have to clean the area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use wipes or anything like that. My mother's not an infant, but but people do. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
We use wipes all the time.
Yeah. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
We go through cases of them.
Yeah. What I do is when I use a basin, and I fill the basin with very warm water, not hot. Of course, I wouldn't scold my mother, but our water doesn't come out so hot that it would really burn anybody anyway. But what I do is I use 3% hydrogen peroxide and I add it to the water. It's safe to add 3%. First of all, is not anywhere near industrial
and you're
hydrogen.
adding it to a basin of water.
I'm adding to a basin with water.
Right, so it's very
It'll
diluted.
kill everything in the water, and it also will probably kill a lot of the surface bacteria. And because it's diluted, it's not going to be an irritant.
Right. Yeah. That's always been a problem with open wounds. Doctors have been like, don't always run to put the peroxide in there because sometimes it actually irritates the wound more than helps.
You can get an infection just because it itches. It dries out your skin, and it's not the greatest thing. But when it's diluted in water, and one of the reasons that I originally had thought of this, it's not like I invented this or anything, but I have a plant that I wanted to transplant because it started growing and it outgrew the pot. And I was looking on YouTube and I discovered that they said you should soak the roots in a solution of 10% hydrogen peroxide for a half hour, because there's always some kind of parasite or or fungus or something on the roots, and this will kill that without damaging the plant.
Your mom, basically.
That's where I got the idea. And then I mentioned to her urologist, and she said, yeah, absolutely, you should do that.
Okay. That was my next question. Did you check with the doctor?
Right. and they said it's okay. And of course, that quantity of hydrogen peroxide is definitely, don't drink it, but I don't think it would do anything to you, even if you did.
Bleach is used to sterilize water, too. So,
yeah, that's true, right.
At the right...
That's true.
Don't just pour bleach.
Actually, that's what those sterilizing tablets are. There's some bleach in that. So, these are all precautions you need to take to prevent UTIs. And probably the biggest thing to prevent UTIs is also hydration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where the urine color comes in also.
Yep.
Because if they're dehydrated, the urine comes out very dark.
Much easier to monitor when you're doing your catheterization multiple times a day. First thing in the morning, we're getting a dark pee color, right? Mm-hmm. She's been sleeping all night. If she has a stomach tube as well, so if she doesn't happen to drink that much with the breakfast, I'll add some water in there. And, the next one should come out yellow or clear.
Right.
No color. It's fine too.
I mean, it's an issue even for me because most people don't drink enough water.
Yeah.
It's just not natural to be drinking water for a lot of people. And you didn't grow up on drinking the proper amount of water. So, now you don't know what the proper amount is. But now as an adult, knowing more about, health and different aspects of caregiving, you learn like, oh, my urine's very dark also. And it's because I'm not hydrated enough.
Or the odor.
Odor, yeah.
Right. Get these sour smells. It's you're either not hydrated or there's a potential infection going.
We're going to talk about also down the road. We're going to talk about the hospital experience related to UTIs and how sometimes it's really frustrating to deal with doctors who don't know us, don't know our loved one, and don't know that a lot of the things that they are doing are wrong. And it's hard for us to say they're doing things wrong, even when other doctors tell them you're doing the wrong thing. I've had our doctor call the hospital and correct them.
Well, on the UTI front, you actually helped me with something more recently. I mean, I've been doing catheters for years and years now at this point, and I never realized that, those little dipsticks.
Oh, yeah.
You can actually buy them.
Yeah.
So, I did my research. I looked online.
Yeah.
I looked at, which ones were real, to make sure that I wasn't buying just pieces of paper.
Right. They're what Mike's talking about. They're like litmus paper where they change color to tell you that usually it's 4 or 5 different things, leukocytes and different things. And, and you could tell from the colors exactly, what kind of infection.
Yeah, there's a little learning curve because mostly doctors are using these type of things, but you can easily buy them on Amazon or someplace. And, at first you're like, well, how do I line this up? But once you figure it out, it's sort of like, okay, unless you're colorblind.
Well, what's funny is that you're not sure which way to hold it.
Yeah.
And I think the way you learn the orientation just by the colors that, where they're supposed to be.
Right. You line up the colors. And then which one is not like the others.
Right. That's what it is.
It's like, oh, that one's not like the others. And you look at the chart and it says, if this has any shade of creamish to bright yellow, there is an issue that you should bring to your doctor to let them test. That doesn't necessarily mean, again, that but there's something, and you can point it out. And then I send it to the doctor, and the doctor is sort of like, oh, we didn't see anything in the dipstick test.
Right.
And I think to myself, hey, listen, I'm a designer. I know color more than you do.
Right.
And I'm telling you that color was this.
Right.
He could be using, maybe he's got better dipsticks over there, but I'm like, I know that color was this. You can't tell me there wasn't a hint of this in there. It says if there's even a hint that there's a
But it's a valuable, those test strips are valuable because, again, like my mother never really presented with her UTI with fever. She'd never had temperature.
Liz too.
Yeah, she doesn't. But one time I brought my mother, I knew for sure she had no, in my mother's case, besides being delusional, she had no strength at all. Normally my mother is able to stand up, using a walker. She'll stand up and then pivot and sit into a wheelchair. She didn't have the strength. Her legs couldn't support her weight to stand. And I knew, of course, I said, it's not safe for her to be home if she can't stand. So she went to the hospital and I said, I checked her temperature and the paramedics checked her temperature and there was no fever. And they said, she's 104 fever. I said, where?
Interesting.
And
that's right.
The fever was down where the infection was. It wasn't in her head. It was down there.
Yeah. And it probably would have spread to her head eventually,
ultimately,
but it started there.
And by the time it got to your head, then you have a real problem.
Right. Because now it's a much bigger infection.
Right.
I just realized, yes, there is another symptom. My wife has slight spasms, but when she gets a UTI, the spasms start, like her knees start pulling up like this a lot. But just knowing about those little dipsticks, has really helped me a lot because now I don't like to just bring a cup every week,
right?
Because my wife has so many different problems, right? It could just be the MS. It could be every time there's a weather change, she has a reaction to it.
Yeah.
So it could be any of those things. But sometimes it manifests, and I'm like, I think this could be an infection, but she just got treated for one last week, and antibiotics tend to last for a week after you're done taking them.
Yeah.
So bringing a sample 3 days afterwards, your doctor's like, well, let's just see how it is. So I usually at least wait the week, but then you got a bigger infection. So now with those little test strips, I can say, you know what, let's just, let's test it ourselves.
Right.
And I'll run a little test. And if I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. It's not always conclusive, but if you get a conclusive one, you can at least say, all right, now I'm definitely going to the doctor, even though I just saw him twice.
Since we're talking about urine, my mother also, in her current mental state, she has an itching problem in that area that, for more than a year, for several years, we're trying to figure out how to stop it. I have a friend who's a dermatologist, and I said, there must be some either an infection or something going on. And I think it's strictly diaper rash. I think it's just from wearing diapers.
Humidity,
urine. It's just urine on the skin that's
Yeah.
irritating her. So we're going to start using a catheter, an external catheter.
Okay. Like a Foley bag, you mean? Or?
No. What's it called?
Oh, the little vacuum cleaner things.
PureWick.
Yeah. They're just so people understand what those are. They're like little. It's like a vacuum cleaner. It's attached to a pump, and anytime liquid comes out, it starts going.
It triggers.
Like a straw.
Right.
You know, is it perfect? No. Sometimes there's a dampness, but
it's better. It's apparently it keeps the skin dry. That's the key.
Right. It pulls.
Yeah.
Pulls moisture away from the skin.
It's not a great system. I mean, you still need to use bed chucks because it leaks. You know, it does. But the problem with PureWick is I was under the impression that Medicare originally paid for it. They will not pay for it. So it's completely out of pocket.
How much?
It's very expensive. But, you know, the thing is my mother's not permanently bedridden. She's in a chair during the day or standing or whatever she's doing. So you only need to use one catheter a day. One catheter, if you buy it in bulk, is $6 and change. So $6 a day. And then the system itself is about $600 or $700. They have two different kinds of systems.
Once, until it breaks.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, eventually they want you to replace the cup, but it's the same thing like the Foley bag. It's not like it flows back, so it doesn't make a difference. You just dump it and rinse the cup every day. That's all.
Yeah. With the Foley bags, we change it. We're supposed to change it. I mean, you base all this based on what insurance says. Right. So they basically will give us 2 Foley bags a month. So every 2 weeks, we change the Foley bag.
Yes, I don't have the luxury of insurance of this particular product.
Oh, no.
And there's been a lot of like lobbying to get Medicare to cover these things, but they won't. And third-party insurance won't cover it either. There are websites that say that there are ways to do it. Somehow Medicare Part C will cover it. But when I called PureWick directly, they said, no, there's no insurance that's going to pay for it. And we don't know what other people are doing. And it was odd because when I talked to the urologist about it, she said, oh, I'll give you a script for it and we'll do this and that. They said, we don't need a prescription. And like, it's sort of like, it seemed like she said that she talks to the nurses, but they don't have nurses there. They don't have people, the salespeople call you. So, and they'll sell to anybody. And I think that's one of the reasons that you can find them sometimes on eBay. I don't know if I would buy it on eBay because it's so expensive to start with.
It's only used.
Yeah. But, you know, I don't know. It's an expensive thing to try, but it's really the supplies that make it expensive because in a year's time, the supplies will cost more than the machine itself.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's session, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons with alerts on to join us for other caregiver discussions. Most importantly, just the 2 of us talking doesn't make a group. We need you to contribute to our group in the comments below. We would love to hear about your experiences and any suggestions, including future topics. That's all for now, but remember that by helping each other, we are not alone.